Greetings, friends. My name is Pavel Stermach, and I'm glad to present for you the new episode of our daily wrap-up series. A new massive missile attack on Ukraine, the 8th in 2 months. As a result of the strike, Mykolaiv and Sumy regions, as well as Odessa, Dnipro, Zaporizhia and Kryvyi Rih, became without power today. Our anti-aircraft forces shot down most of the missiles launched by Russians. Therefore, Ukrainians will not experience a massive blackout today. However, the rocket launch was insidious. Only on the weekend, the power industry was able to stabilize the system a little bit. Kiev and 4 other regions returned to stabilization shutdowns. That is, Ukrainians will sit without electricity according to the schedule, and at least somehow they can plan their lives. I will try to explain. After the last massive missile attack on Ukraine, which took place on November 23rd, Ukrainians were without electricity for a long period of time. In the first days, some houses were without light for 50 hours. Later, power companies tried to turn on the lights for at least 2 hours a day. And during this time, people had to cook food, do laundry and household chores, and charge their old gadgets. And I'm not talking about the fact that after the coronavirus pandemic and the war, a lot of people switched to remote work, so they had to complete all their work tasks in those 2 hours too. And you know what? We had time. We now know which public facilities have generators and free spaces. We know where the nearest point of invincibility is. And we went to neighbors or relatives in another part of the city. We bought generators, inverters and batteries. Our energy engineers do the impossible. Our power system will be restored in a matter of days. If one of the day's strikes were lacked about half the capacity, all nuclear power plants stopped due to low consumption. As of today's morning, we need 17% more than we can produce. But the whole winter is still ahead, and we are preparing for new shocks and outages.
Кожен з цих 90 зимових днів.
Each of these 90 winter days, the enemy really hopes to use winter against us, to make winter cold and hardship part of his terror. We have to do everything to endure this winter, no matter how hard it is, and we will endure. To endure this winter is to defend everything. Russia still has missiles and advantage in artillery. Yes, but we have something that the occupiers does not have and will not have. We defend our home, and that gives us the strongest motivation possible. We fight for freedom, and that always multiplies any force. We defend the truth, and this unites the whole world around Ukraine.
At the same time, Russia increasingly finds itself in diplomatic isolation. At the G20 summit, instead of Putin, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Sergei Lavrov, flew in. And he held only one meeting with representatives of China. All others simply did not want to negotiate with countries, representatives that more and more international organizations consider a terrorist. Even Minister Lavrov was not allowed to attend the OSCE meeting. And every day I hope that the Kremlin will have fewer and fewer conversations with civilized countries. At that time, the other day, French President Emmanuel Macron called the Kremlin. I hope he dialed to personally report that France has started work on creating a special tribunal for Russia. I would like to remind you that in addition to this, the European Commission proposed to create a special fund for compensation to Ukraine at the expense of frozen Russian assets. And the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine approved an appeal on the illegitimacy of Russia's membership in the United Nations. All of this is Russia's inevitable punishment for aggression. After all, Russian crimes are not an internal matter of Russia and not a matter of Russian-Ukrainian relations. This is an encroachment on the international order based on the principles of the UN. Therefore, it is a problem of the entire international community. Russia should follow the same path as Nazi Germany, the former Yugoslavia and Rwanda, an international tribunal for war criminals.
Do you want to provide security guarantees for terrorist and killer countries? Instead of Nuremberg signing an agreement with the Russian Federation and shaking hands, Ukrainian blood on Putin's hand will not interfere with business as usual. The strange logic of behind-the-scenes diplomacy, the time of which is over. The question is to guarantee the safety of the world from the so-called Russia, not vice versa. The experience of Budapest is useful to you. When you are unarmed, you are not a threat. Unfortunately, we know the so-called denuclearized and demilitarized Russia is the best guarantee of peace for Europe and the world. Alexei Danilov, Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, in Facebook.
Today is the 28th anniversary of signing of the Budapest Memorandum, which was supposed to guarantee Ukraine's integrity and protection in exchange for giving up the third largest nuclear arsenal in the world. Among the signatories of this treaty was Russia. which is now trying to seize more Ukrainian territory. Therefore, before signing any document with Russia, you need to think again. What will happen if Russia violates this agreement? And they will break it sooner or later. We can already see this from history. Today, the whole world celebrates Volunteer Day, the day of a person who, without financial reward, without any obligations, does what it needed by other person, enterprise organization, and in the Ukrainian case, even the army of the state. The Ukrainian volunteer movement is a phenomenon that has been working in our countries for centuries. Even in ancient times, we had such a concept as toloka. This is when the whole street gathered to help one or another owner. In this way, houses or buildings important to the village were built, mills, forges, or simply storehouses. And therefore, in case of need, our people simply united. Even during the Revolution of Dignity in 2014, people came to the Maidan to feed the demonstrators and brought firewood to keep them warm. And already the following year, when Russia introduced its troops into Crimea and Donbass, and the Ukrainian army was not in the best condition. At that time, no one expected an attack from a neighbor. Then the Ukrainian volunteer community started working. People collected everything: body armor, helmets, socks, military shoes. And this is not to mention volunteer food for the military, or goodies or gifts for major holidays. Already in 2022, each of the Ukrainians remembered again what it is like to be a volunteer. Almost every day we collect money for cars, for the military, for generators, for hospitals or places for heating. The Ukrainians even resorted to Bayraktars, satellites, and mechanized infantry combat vehicles. And we have a joke that if the military asks to get the Death Star from Star Wars, Ukrainian volunteers will find it.
You are always there. We constantly feel your care and support. Volunteers and soldiers are an inseparable and fact family bond. Our unity is a strength and indomitability of the Ukrainian nation. Thank you very much, dear volunteers, for helping the army. The stability of our defense, the liberated cities and villages, relative but still peace in most of the country is a joint merit, and our victory will also be shared. Valery Zaluzhny, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Force of Ukraine, in Facebook.
Our volunteers can find anything if you ask them to, and this is one of their most amazing qualities. It seems that they know what is in every warehouse in the world, because how else can you explain that our well-wishers bring walkie-talkies, drones, airplanes, generators, pickup trucks for the military, and medical vehicles for civilians, food and warm clothes for people who were under occupation. Ukrainians who cannot help financially help with their hands. Someone makes trench candles, someone donates blood for the wounded. Grandmothers, for example, bake pies, knit socks, weave nets, and preserve food. Grandfathers remember their childhood and work as home engineers. They repair everything they can. They invent their personal life hacks. And now many people helped to move from and in the evacuation.
Volunteers are the people thanks to whom we resisted and continue to expel the invaders from our land. You do everything to make our defense forces, our defenders, feel that every Ukrainian is nearby and ready to help. From your care and steadfastness, the strategic mission of Ukraine grows to make itself as a country of people of goodwill, a country of mutual aid, mutual understanding, and the realization of a common goal, in which human life will always be a priority. Kirill Budanov, Chief of the Main Intelligence Directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine.
But what can we talk about if even our children are eager to volunteer? They create their own roadblocks in yards and on the streets and check the entrance and exits their territory, sell cookies, their drawings and self-made jewelry. They simply write letters and send wishes to our defenders, and thereby they raise their morale. Every Ukrainian is now looking for how he can help the country, the army, and thus each of us. And I didn't mention the volunteers who help people in the front line and the temporarily occupied territories, despite possible shelling, gridlock, torture, and possibly death. These are people who are not afraid to go to Berdyansk, Melitopol, or Mariupol and simply bring some food or medicine to the needy. And that's why today every Ukrainian thanks a volunteer, although knowing them, they won't accept strong congratulations, but simply ask to drop money for the next collection. That concludes today's video. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for our future videos. Subscribe to UATV English and goodbye.